There is one elder in my mission who was hit by a car. This is probably one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard in my entire life. I almost don't even know if I want to share it. There was one elder in my mission who was biking across the street, and he's following his companion. His companion crossed, and he was crossing, and there was a girl in a car, and she didn't really see the elder, and she was turning left or right, I don't remember, and she hit him, and he went under the car, and his poor companion saw the whole thing because he turned around to see what had happened because his companion wasn't right next to him. And he saw this companion get hit and go under the car because the car was rolling forward. For whatever reason, it doesn't make sense mechanically or scientifically or in any way whatsoever, the car bounced on that side. Shocks shouldn't have come into action at all, but they did, and the tire bounced over this elder's face, and he saw it going over his head, and it didn't crush him. And he lived. And yeah, he broke his arm, and he had some injuries. But he could have died, and he didn't. Because I don't know how, but the Lord lifted up that car. And that is something that as a missionary, that's something that happens. That's not an uncommon story of an elder or a sister who's on their bike and they're doing everything right, and something crazy starts happening and all of a sudden stops happening. You know, I heard a story of an elder who was riding and was about to fall into a busy street and somehow didn't. You know, just ways that the Lord sort of helps you. But you need to be being obedient in order for you to call down those blessings. You need to be able to be obeying the rules and doing what you know you're supposed to be doing, safety-wise, in order to be able to receive those.
For the most part, I didn't have to worry so much about crime. It was actually kind of a blessing because when people see you as a missionary, they know that you're not going to do anything bad to them. And it was actually really interesting because, you know, I taught a gang member actually one time as an investigator, and he always, you know, said that, you know, whenever he sees us on the street or whatever, he would always wave hi, and like if he, you know, had any, you know, friends or whatever that saw us, you know, he would tell them to say hi. So it was just really funny. But I do remember one experience. There was one night, it was my second summer in Las Vegas, and there were a lot of fireworks that went on, and I thought it was actually September, so it was like right at the end of summer, and September 15th is like the Mexican Independence Day, so I thought they were like playing fireworks, or they were, you know, having like a fireworks show for the Independence thing, because it happened during that week, but it actually wasn't fireworks, it was gunshots. And my companion was like, "Was that gunshots?" And I said, "No, I thought it was fireworks." And so he went out, my companion went out, and he saw this guy carrying a gun, you know, getting out of the apartment complex, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, you know, like I just saw this guy with a gun like run outside of the complex." And there was a security guard that came up later, and he was like, "Hey, did you see anything happen?" And my companion said, "Yeah, I saw this guy run out," and suddenly he became a witness to this scene. And so the police came, and the police kind of like asked us questions about like this guy and, you know, what my companion saw. And then like we had detectives come, and the detective had like a formal interview with him to ask him like every little detail of what he saw, because he went into a car and the car went off, and he had to say what color the car was and what brand and model and stuff. It was just kind of nerve-wracking knowing that, you know, something like that can happen so close in an apartment complex. You know, the missionaries in our apartment actually had the idea of just saying a prayer, just just asking for safety, just being comforted that everything will be all right. And so we did. And I think it was after that that we had the impression that we should go over to an English missionary's apartment, just kind of stay with them for the night. And so all four of us kind of took our belongings and we went over to this apartment to stay at for the night. Long story short, that night there was another shooting that happened at that apartment, except this time what happened was there were gunshots it was in our apartment and then our apartment next to us. So there were like gunshot holes like in the walls. And I don't think there was any like in the windows or anything. But I think they were actually aiming for the apartment next to us, because the apartment next to us, we overheard them talking the night before about like, oh, like how could you miss? And, like, what did you do? Like, we're going to be in like so much trouble. And so like we had no idea what was happening with them. And so I think the gang that came by, they were going for like our neighbors. And so our apartment got, some of the gunshots as well. And after that, we booked it out of there. I mean, we called our zone leaders, our APs, the mission president, and they said, get out of there as soon as you can. It was actually really interesting because we got all of our stuff out, and we didn't move to an apartment just yet because it was 2 weeks away from transfers, and, one of us might, leave the area. And it actually happened that both of us left the area. And so I can't really say anything about like how the transition was, but so yeah, that's the story of how our apartment got shot at on my mission. So I always kind of relate that story to like Lehi and his family, fleeing from Jerusalem because they knew that Jerusalem was going to be destroyed, and so they took kind of all their belongings and fled to the Promised Land. And I kind of like always make that similarity about how God guided us through that situation. He just wanted to make sure that we were okay and that, we got all of our stuff out and just to another apartment and just making sure that we were all okay. And that was a really comforting experience for me, knowing that God was watching over us. Use common sense, listen to the Spirit if it says something. But I mean, we didn't have to be in by a certain time or anything like that. We just had to be in by 9. That was kind of the normal time that we all had to be in by.
This is one that I think I've shared maybe a couple times, because I feel like with sacred experiences, the more they're shared, I know for me, the more they're shared, the more they're shared, they might not become as sacred. And I share this for any of those who have a son or a daughter on a mission, or a brother or a sister, or even a friend, and they worry about their safety. Because I really believe that I probably shouldn't be here today. I think I would have survived because I was a missionary still, but I don't know. I'm sure it would have been a long process. But it was up in Kosovo, and we were driving to Jakova. It's a city like an hour out. And I was on splits with my sister training leader. And the roads over there are crazy awful. But there was construction at a part, so it was even worse. And I remember we were going around a curve, and we were going kind of fast, and the right tire of the car hit a ditch. And then she corrected, but she overcorrected, and it was a 2-lane traffic, and it was super close to each other. And we were heading head on to this car, and that we were both going fast, and I could see my companion at the time trying to get us back, so we wouldn't get hit, but it was just all happening so quickly, and I saw her brace for impact. And I was in the passenger seat, and as this all was happening, I was eating chocolate somehow, and I saw her brace for impact. I was like, well, this is it. And so I put the last piece of chocolate in my mouth, like ready for impact. And we both had our seatbelts on, so I was like, okay, we'll be okay with that way. And I knew that she was like bracing, and I didn't have much time to react, but I didn't want to close my eyes. I was like, I'm gonna watch it, like, to see how it happens, you know. And I remember our car and this car were coming super close, and there was probably about a foot between us, and then it got a lot closer to where we were supposed to hit each other. But at first I just thought the headlights were coming together, making like a bright light. But then this bright light got higher, and it sort of seemed to take on body forms. And our car just repelled off of this light for a few feet, and then it went straight. And it was like nothing had happened. And my companion opened her eyes because she was bracing for impact like anybody would do. She's like, what on earth just happened? Because we looked back and that car was fine too. It was going its way. And in my mind, I can still see it. I can just see a big wall of super bright light. And it was like human forms of light for a while. And we just repelled off of that, and we were fine. There was just a ton of mud on our car from the road, but I think and I know that we were protected as missionaries. And the thought that came to mind right after that was I told my companion, and I was like, that is a proof of little kids praying for us today. And I don't share that to have like attention on me at all, because I haven't shared it. But I share that because I know from that personal experience that missionaries are protected. And whatever happens on a person's mission is God's will, because some missionaries aren't able to make it home. They go take a shortcut to the heavenly home. But I know that whatever happens on a person's mission is God's will. And I'm grateful that God saw fit to spare me and my companion's life that day. And that proved to me that I still have a ton I need to do in my life. But I know that was because of the prayers that were being said by my family, and by the primary in our wards, and by the patrons that go to the temple. And I know as long as the missionary is doing its best and trying to be exactly obedient and to not hinder the will of God in their investigators' lives or anything, that they don't need to worry about if they're going to be protected. Because if they're doing what they should on a mission, and God sees fit for them to come to the heavenly home, then they went with nothing to worry about. And the family should be comforted knowing that, honestly, the best place to die, I think, is on a mission. Knowing you've done your best, because you know that you've squared away everything with the Lord and you're fine. I also know that God does protect his missionaries, like what happened to me and my companion. And not a day goes by that I don't think about that, because my life could have changed. The life of my family and my friends could have changed, and her family and her friends. But I know that God knew where we were, and I know that he protected us, and I know that that wall of light that I saw were angels, and they were some of the angels that were assigned to me and my companion, and just other angels who knew who they could have been. But I know that God is aware of his missionaries and the missionaries' families and friends, that they never go unnoticed to God at all.